the clinical element of it, I would say, is more like engineering. And what engineers do is try to do things. They try to make something happen. And they are informed by theory. But the point is still to build something. And when you're working as a clinical psychologist, and most of the initial theorists that we'll discuss for the first little more than a third to a half of the course are clinical theorists, they're trying to build something. And they're dealing with very, very difficult conceptual problems because they're either trying to cure mental disorders or maybe even unhappiness and trying to bring about health. And the problem with that is that it's not a straightforward thing to define a mental disorder from a scientific perspective, because what's healthy mentally and what's not is partly social judgment, and it's partly socially constructed, and it partly has to do with norms, and it partly has to do with ideals, because you might also say that to be healthy is to be normal, but you could also say that to be healthy is to be ideal. And then of course you run into the problem of having to conceptualize an ideal, and it isn't self-evident that science is capable of conceptualizing an ideal, because ideals tend to fall into the domain of moral judgments, say, or philosophical judgments, rather than scientific judgments per se. So what I would say to you is that it would be worthwhile to approach this course as if you were an engineer of the human spirit, an engineer of your own spirit to begin with, but also an engineer of the spirits of other people, because as you interact with other people, you inevitably tell them what you want and what you don't want. When they give you what you want and what you admire, you respond positively to them, you pay attention to them, you smile at them, you focus your thoughts on them, you interact with them, and you reward them for acting in a particular manner. And when they don't respond the way that you want, then you punish them with a look, or by turning away, or by rejecting their friendship, or when you're a child, by refusing to play with them. And so we're engaged in the co-creation of personalities, our own and others. And that also brings up the same question: what is it that we are all collectively trying to be and trying to create? I suspect that you all have the experience of falling short of the ideal, an ideal that you hold for yourself or an ideal that other people hold for you. I suspect that you all feel the negative consequences of falling short of that ideal. Freud would conceptualize that as the superego imposing its judgment on the ego, you being the ego, the superego being a hybrid, I suppose, of external forces and also your internalization of those judgments and forces.